Hello, everyone.
Hello
Andy
there.
here from Biohazard Declassified. Hope everybody's doing okay. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Biohazard Declassified podcast. We got a very, very special guest today. We have RE Challenger. We've got him on. It's been a long time coming. A personal inspiration of mine, Luke Nougie. How the devil are you doing today?
I am doing very, very well. Feel very blessed to be on your podcast. So, yeah, thank you very much for having me.
So it's I've been following your content for on and off about 15, 16 years now. I remember watching your content back on Google Video. I think the first live stream I ever watched was the first ever video that you produced was season 1, episode 4, which was, again, we spoke off air.
Great
it was
memory.
the iconic That's Cheap Nemesis clip, which has stayed forever. And then since that time, I just absolutely binged. Probably up until about season 4. That was when I think I started to, other stuff crept up and whatnot. But yeah, it was absolutely fantastic trailblazer in content creation. But if we step back a bit, what is Resident Evil Challenger, and how did this come to fruition?
Oh, what a question. So yeah, Resident Evil Challenger is a YouTube channel, as you said, that's been going for nearly 17 years. So yeah, it's been on the web for quite a while. And it all started off with me and one of my best friends from school called Nathan. And the whole concept was we wanted to try and beat the entire Resident Evil series within 24 hours. And yeah, when we started doing it, we were like 15 years old at the time. And we didn't think that anyone would believe us that if we, actually beat all of the games. So we wanted to have some evidence for it, because this was way back in the interweb. This was way before like streaming was a thing, or you could watch people live. So the only way that we could actually have this evidence was to actually film it with some video cameras that we had. But yeah, as I said, because it was before like live streaming and everything, we were literally like filming like the old CRT TVs with the camera. There's no kind of live streaming or capture cards or anything like that. So yeah, it looks pretty janky and pretty aged now, but yeah, it was a pretty fun concept at the time.
And again, this was what, 2005, 2006, pretty much predating before YouTube started picking up. I actually remember watching you guys on Google Video. But again, this was like, this was unheard of, really. Like no one had done something like this, and just the premise of beating as many Resident Evil games as you can within 24 hours is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. But why Resident Evil?
Because, Andy, why ask that question? Because me and you both know best survival horror series out there. But the more interesting answer to that question is, I just like Resident Evil. I think I started playing when I was about 6 years old. And unlike any other game that I played at the time, it just like, well, one, it scared the crap out of me. And two, there was just something like so addictive about that thrill of being so scared and being in control of it. It's different to like watching a film and you just watch the protagonist like go through, through the adventure. Like you're in control, you're the driver of this adventure. And yeah, that thrill just really hooks me in. And yeah, that was what, 25? Oh my God, I'm showing my age here. That was like 25 years ago. So yeah, I still haven't shaken it off. Still playing Resident Evil 1 all the time. So yeah, love all those games.
It's almost, and again, I play Resident Evil time just like yourself. It's almost like you can always go back to it, especially the old ones. You can always go back to it, and it never gets boring for me. And I'm imagining it's probably going to be the same for yourself.
Right, so that is kind of our USP with Resident Evil Challenger. So, when we were doing like a load of our like challenge videos, quite often it would be like we started off like playing 3 games each. So me, I would do 3 games. Nathan would do 3 games, and both of us are trying to beat all of them within 24 hours. And then we upped that to like 4 games each. And eventually we got to the point where we knew the game so well, where we thought that how can we up the ante from this? How can we make these games more challenging, you might say? Which was where we came up with the concept of adding in stipulations for the games. So yeah, we added in these stipulations where it was, playing Resident Evil 3 like with just handguns, or playing Resident Evil 4, without using any green herbs or something. So we thought up of all of these different creative ideas, and I think the creativity of stipulations and all the different concepts that we've tried out have just added more to the longevity of the series. So yeah, I think as long as you can keep being creative, I don't think I'll ever become bored of these games.
And on top of that, I never thought when I was watching, and you could see it as years went on, naturally you and Nathan got better at Resident Evil. Like, your skills got better, you learned better strategies on defeating enemies. I never felt like you were trying to... I know it's ironic, really, because you're trying to beat it in 24 hours. It was never about beating the game as fast as you can. If any, the stipulations, I'll make you 100% right, the stipulations made RE Challenger, really, because I don't remember you beating the game fast, but I remember you beating Resident Evil 4 with just the limited hand cannon.
Oh, God, man, these memories are so nostalgic.
Season 2, episode 2, that was. I remember it. Man. I remember it off the top of my head.
You're really showing your knowledge here. That is amazing. But yeah, back to your point. I think the main thrill that people have had with our content is watching us suffer, ultimately. Like, there are certain YouTube channels out there, which I watch all the time, where you're watching like perfectionist YouTubers out there, and they do every single thing is perfect and they get it right. And that's great. And it's always good to learn from. But the thing that people enjoyed with us was us screwing ourselves over, us struggling on things, fighting the same bosses with ridiculous stipulations over and over and over again, until you've eventually overcome it and you get that victory. And yeah, it's I guess that's kind of been one of our main sort of USPs, really.
Yeah, and again, that has lended itself quite nicely to the longevity of the series. But also, like, what's special about Resident Evil Challenger is just, aside from the fact you've been going 16 years, is the technological advancement since then.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely insane. Like, you started off both with GameCubes, streaming. Just record streaming. It's almost like it's off the top of your head. Recording with like what, high 8 camera, a mini DV camera at the time, and then obviously Twitch became huge, streaming to the internet became huge. But all of you've got hours and hours of content that completely predated this. And you must, and I mentioned this briefly off air, but you must look now and think, oh God, like, I really wish I had this back in 2005. This would OBS would have totally made my life easier.
Right, so this is what I was saying to you just before we went live, is that I feel like you and all of these new streamers are cheaters. Unbelievable. They didn't have to go through the trials and tribulations we did. They didn't have to hook their cameras up to like Babe Station streaming platforms. They didn't have to film their TV screens. They didn't have to run out of videotapes. So like, some of our like challenges are quite funny because like we're filming like our updates at the beginning, and like 1 hour in, this is how we're doing. 2 hours in, this is how we're doing. But like back in those days when we were like 15 and we were funding these things out of our pocket money, we could only afford to have like one tape for like each challenge that we did. And so we'd get to like the last like 4 hours and we'd realize it would have about like 4 minutes of tape. So in like quite a lot of the challenges, you'll just watch like the updates become like rapid, and all of a sudden like 4 hours has gone in like 30 seconds. So the technology has been quite a big part of our content.
Yeah, that's such an iconic line, actually. Updates later. That's like burned into my skull. Like, updates later. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you're also fighting against technology as well. Aside from recording 2 cameras, I can count the amount of times that Nathan had some technology issue, whether his GameCube laser died or his Wii died or something like that, or his nunchuck died, or it's. But now it's all on it's pretty much all on your computer. The best ports of Resident Evil, the old Resident Evils at least, are all on your computer. I actually kind of feel sorry for you in a way, because you played the GameCube version where you had to sit through all of those door scenes. But now we don't really have to do that anymore.
Oh man, so I've only just started using door skip mods, and it has now, as you just said, it has now ruined the GameCube games for me, because now when I play a game without door skip, it just feels so long. It's crazy how much longer it feels. How did we do it? How did we sit watching Doors for so many hours back then? It's crazy.
And you got to think, again, you're doing your 24-hour challenge. How much time you would have saved if you would have just had the Source Next version of Resident Evil 2 back in 2007 or 6.
So it's quite funny you should say that. So at the end of last year, in December, that's our most recent 24-hour challenge that we did. I did a solo challenge, and it was basically sort of like a reimagined challenge from one that I did back in 2007, which was trying to beat 7 Resident Evil games within 24 hours. And it was a solo challenge. So Nathan wasn't there, and Izzy, his sister, wasn't there. It was just me attempting to do it. And it was a real tricky one, because obviously we didn't have the buffer time that we've had with the previous challenges before. Every minute really counted. And so for this one, we did introduce the door skip modded Resident Evils. And I got so nerdy with like my finishing times of the games that I actually logged how long they took in 2007 and then how much quicker they took with the door skip mods. And the door skip mods genuinely took hours away from times. I think the door skip mods took at least 3 hours away from the overall challenge. So yeah, they save hours of time. So I think fans must be really grateful to see that and not be watching Doors for hours.
Yeah, and aside from being when you're streaming, they're really good breaks so you can engage with your chat and whatnot. It's almost you struggle to games like Code Veronica, which I know it's got a PS3 door skip now. One of the best games of all time.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try that out.
Biohazard Classified. I told you, man. We know everything. No. So the PS3 version of Code Veronica. If you load it on a PS3 emulator, someone's released a mod for the PS3 emulator to skip the door scenes. So, but where it's not been from a retail release, at least, there's not been a door skip mod. One of my favourite games is Code Veronica, but it just takes so long to get through it on the stream. I mean, a stream of Code Veronica probably take you 7-8 hours in real time. I felt sorry for Nathan, actually, playing Code Veronica as many times as he did.
I think throughout the entire 16 and a bit years that we've done, I think Nathan's played Code Veronica maybe 4 times. But yeah, Code Veronica, I think is, oh God. I said to myself, was I going to go down this rabbit hole of what is your favorite Resident Evil? Because this always changes, but Code Veronica is always in the top 3. I love that game. It's holds a special place in my heart.
Is it a nostalgia thing though? Is it because you think it's a fun game? Because I think, for example, mine's Resident Evil 2. I love playing the game, but also I have fond memories of watching my parents play it when I was 5 years old, and watching all my uncles all play it together, and then kind of giving it to me, and then I'm like, wow, this game's so amazing, and it's kind of snowballed from there. Is that the same for you with Code Veronica? I appreciate you're probably a little bit older than me.
What are you trying to say?
You've aged gracefully. You've aged gracefully.
I'll take that. You brought it back very quickly. So I'm the same as you. Resident Evil 2. I think most fans here would say that Resident Evil 2 is their favorite. Same with me. I think the only person outside of that, at least that I know, probably Nathan. So Nathan's favorite is Resident Evil 0. But yeah, Code Veronica, I love it. A big part because I think the story is great. I think it just absolutely nails that horror vibe. It gets the atmosphere great. The soundtrack's brilliant. It's creepy. It all just looks awesome. I think another reason for it is because of the knife. I love the knife in that game. And Resident Evil Challenge, we've done so many knife-only runs of Code Veronica. And I think because that knife is so great, it's just really pushed it above quite a lot of the other games for me. And
I love, and this is how I found out about a few things picking up from your playthroughs is I love the Nosferatu knife scene. It's my all-time favourite killing scene in all of Resident Evil.
Yeah, it was a really nice like little Easter egg that they put into there. And I don't want to blow our own trumpet or anything, but I think a lot of people didn't know about that cutscene until they saw us do like the knife only run in 2007, I think it was. Because again, there weren't, kind of like videos of it on YouTube or anything. So yeah, I think that was a big reveal for a lot of RE fans at the time.
On top of all of this, and I hate to get too sentimental, but you've been doing this for 15 years. You're millennial, just like myself, a little bit older.
Outrageous.
But you started this at a time where you're a child, and on screen, your viewers, and you have a very tight-knit community, I know you do, they've kind of watched you become a man. How does that kind of make you feel growing up at a time where, at a time now where everyone's lives online?
Yeah.
Like, with TikTok and Instagram, your viewers have effectively watched you grow as you've got jobs and you've finished your degrees and whatnot. Like you kind of start to go, and obviously I know Nathan's got children now. You can't, your lives have moved on, but one thing that has always been constant or has always been there is Resident Evil.
Yeah, I feel unbelievably grateful to like have this community beneath us. Like, there's so few other examples that I know personally of people that have this community that's followed them for so long. And yeah, so for some of you who are, aren't aware of our content, but basically we had a bit of a hiatus for about 5 years, and we came back like right at the start of lockdown in May 2020. And so, this is the first bit of content really that we properly released in about 5 years. And yeah, and then we started doing like loads of live streams, and we were doing weekly content. And yeah, we've been away for 5 years, but the community all came back, and then we had loads of new people as well. And we were doing it all as a charity fundraiser. So we were trying to fundraise for the NHS in the UK. As I'm sure everyone knew, the NHS was in a bit of had a lot of troubles back then with PPE and everything else that was going on. And my mum's a nurse for the NHS. And so I thought, what can I try and do personally to help this? And, the fact that we had like such a good following, I thought, well, if people watching our content, want to donate like £5 here or £2 here, then, if I can raise a couple £100 for the NHS, that'd be great. And fast forward just over 18 months now, and we've raised nearly £20,000 for the charities I've been fundraising for. Brilliant. So yeah, I'm just so grateful that we've got this community behind us. Like, we're not the biggest RE community by any stretch of the imagination, but the loyalty that we have is just unimaginable. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
Do you still get a lot of kind of older Challenger fans from following you when you were sort of 17, 18 years old? Do you still have them coming back into the streams and whatnot?
Oh man, right. So the number one like comment of someone entering like the live streams is, I remember this from 2007, and someone will go on like an anecdotal story of some challenge memory or live stream that they are watching. Seems to be 2007 was the sweet spot when loads of people like got into our content. But yeah, all the time, like nearly on a weekly basis, there's a comment or something of, yeah, I remember this content from back then.
Yeah, we've got people right in our chat now saying, Benjamin says, I was 14 when I started watching challenges, and now I'm almost 29, which is, again, absolutely crazy. And I know you're an exceptionally humble man, and I know you're always underrating yourself and whatnot, but the impact that Resident Evil Challenger had in 2008, 2009, you can kind of inadvertently be credited to a lot of modern Resident Evil content creators like myself. I've spent hours and hours when I was a kid watching your content, and as I was growing up, you was growing up. I started watching some of your short films as well. One of the most iconic ones I saw was had like a hitman. No,
Oh,
it was like
God.
it was one of your first short films. But
Yeah.
my degree's in television production as well,
Oh,
so
okay.
we're on very similar paths.
I know that exact film.
Yeah,
And
where
there's a
the
reason
big
why you
twist
can't
at the
find it
end.
anymore. Yeah, that is well gone from the internet now.
Yeah, that was probably 2011. I want to say 20, maybe even earlier than that, 2010.
It was 2011 because it was in my final year of uni doing film production. It was called X Spots the Mark. If you really want to
That was
remember,
it.
yeah,
And it was good. It was I love the twist at the end. It was again how I'm just remembering this off the cuff. But again, seeing you grow throughout the years, and inevitably, like any content creation or form of media, you lose touch, whether it be a song, whether it be a video, and then you always find your way back. And the way I found myself back, as we were speaking off stream, the way I found myself back was this new Resident Evil Christmas mod that came out a couple of weeks ago, and there was this line in it, and it said, "That's cheap." And I was playing it, and I was like, I know that name. I know that sound. And I saw the Trivium show. I'm like, holy shit, that's Luke. That's fucking Nougie. I remember watching that guy when I was a lot younger. And then you obviously liked. I think you liked one of my posts on Twitter or whatever. I was like, holy shit, we need to make something happen ASAP. Well, how did that come about? This whole Christmas mod.
Oh man! Again, talking about like how loyal we are, how loyal our community is, and everything. So there is a guy under a load of different names. So he's mostly known as Yormi Line Judic, also known as Chili Con Carnage, but most of the people in the community know him as Rob. And yeah, he basically, you know how everyone kind of found their lockdown project, their thing they invested countless amount of hours into. Fortunately, mine was Resident Evil Challenger. But Rob's one was he decided to do a mod of Resident Evil 2, but to make it a Resident Evil Challenger mod. And this isn't the Christmas mod. This is another one that he did before then. And so he spent God knows how many hours going through our content, pulling out sound bites, changing all of the textures, using like photos and just media that he'd managed to collate over the years. And he made this mod of Resident Evil 2 where all of the cutscenes have been replaced with mine and Nathan's sound bites. All of the enemies, all of the items, like everything has been made as a reference to Resident Evil Challenger. Like the ink ribbons from the typewriter have been replaced with mini DV tapes from our camcorder. Like the intricacy that he went to the mod was just crazy. So yeah, he made that last year. And then I mentioned to him that I was planning on doing the solo Christmas challenge. And I was like, could you add a couple of like, Christmas jumpers on the zombies? I think it'd be really cool. And he went and took the mod and just took it to another level and just added so much to it. And yeah, I'm just really fortunate that because it had Resident Evil Christmas in it at Christmas time, loads of streamers just managed to come across it and did their own live streams of it, which are all super popular and got us like a load of new viewers and has connected me with lovely people like yourself, which has been great. But we do also have one more mod coming up, which is actually this time next week. So Rob has just finished a mod of Resident Evil 1, so the original 1996 one. So Beautiful. I'll be doing a blind playthrough of it next week. So I've said nothing. I know nothing that is in this mod at all. So yeah, next Tuesday, everyone will get to see my live reactions to it. So God knows what's going to be in there.
Oh. You're going to be streaming that on your page.
Yeah,
sort of 8 p.m. UK time,
I think it's like 7:30 next Tuesday. But yeah, it's just on the Resident Evil Challenge YouTube. Cheap plug there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, this is your episode, man. You're the guest. Do you now that you've do you still keep up with Resident Evil, like with the modern ones particularly? I know you're huge, like myself. Nothing will come close to the original kind of trilogy. Do you still keep up with Resident Evil?
Yeah, man. So yeah, we did some content around Village last year, which was great. And so of course I got COVID at the end of last year. It was all fine. It was all good. But I took a week to just really invest time into Village properly and really go through the game and really explore it, because when I did my first playthrough, when I was live streaming it, you know, when you're doing it in front of a live audience, you have to kind of rush around a little bit more. You can't quite take the same amount of time to explore everything. And so I just use this time to really, really get into it and really explore it. And I also managed to beat it on hardcore mode, which is really fun. Haven't quite got the balls to try out Village of Shadows yet, but I love that game. It's it's really awesome.
And you've seen, much like myself, you've seen Resident Evil. I mean, just peaks and troughs in terms of of quality.
So inconsistent.
I mean, I remember putting out a video in sort of 2014 saying, "Is Resident Evil dead?" And I look back on that video and think, "Holy shit! I'm glad it's not." Because it's made that to me at that point in time when you had Resident Evil 6 and you're like, this series doesn't really know. I feel like this series doesn't really know where it wants to go anymore. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, I think everything changed. It started to move when Resident Evil Remake was ported to PS3, Xbox 360. I think Capcom then realised there's actually a market for survival horror. It's almost like the thing we started this series on is actually popular. And I think from there they picked that data up from the remastered port, and then release 7, people, you know, starting to get interested in the series again. And then when 2 Remake dropped, I think they went, right, if we're going to do survival horror, let's do it properly. And I think Resident Evil 2 is the best modern Resident Evil game.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, Resident Evil 2 Remake is incredible. I absolutely loved it. I felt Resident Evil 3 Remake is just so divisive. Like, people love it or they hate it. I actually really like Resident Evil 3 Remake. I think it gets a lot of flack because, you know, and I agree with a lot of this, they really cut the corners. There's so much that wasn't there. And also, Nemesis ultimately was pathetic. He didn't even kill any STARS members. So that was kind of rubbish in itself. But in terms of a game to play and the amount of hours you can get out of it, and, you know, all of the bonus weapons and Inferno mode and everything else, I really enjoyed it for what it was. So yeah, I really love that. But yeah, 2 Remake was just pretty much perfect as you can get for a remake. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
The absolute best case scenario.
I also can't believe it. This year is going to have been 20 years since Resident Evil 1 Remake came out, which is madness. And it still looks amazing. Like, yes, it has been, you know, remastered onto different consoles since then. But still, like, I think it really holds up. And it still scares the crap out of me, even today. So, yeah, I love the Resident Evil 1 Remake.
Yeah, I think I would like to see it not remade. I see the comment a lot on our videos. I would love to see Resident Evil 1 Remake remade. I would like to see at least a port to Unity. And then we can... it's just a shame that they lost a lot of the original source files for the backgrounds, because I think that really hindered Resident Evil 1 Remake's remaster. I know we're really using a lot of terms here. Remaster on...
so many re's
for widescreen. It really hindered it, but it didn't have that effect with Resident Evil 0, because I think they retained a lot of the assets of Resident Evil 0, which is why it does look a little bit better. What was your... you're an old school fan. What was your thoughts on the Resident Evil 0 and 1 when comparing them to the original?
Oh, this is, again, always such a divisive question. Again, this is one on our within our community that really splits people. As I was saying earlier, Resident Evil 0 is Nathan's favorite Resident Evil, hands down. There's never been a question about that. In nearly every Resident Evil challenge that we've done, Nathan has, in nearly every single one, played Resident Evil 0. He loves the game. And I don't know how much of it is nostalgia, but I also really love it. I mean, I agree with most people in that there are a lot of things wrong with it, and it can be very clunky, and the inventory management is unbelievably frustrating. You know, when you just want to get on with the game and you'll be spending 10 minutes working out where you're leaving items, and then you can't leave enough items in that spot, and you've got to leave the room, leave some more items outside another room, then go back in, then pick up some stuff. You know, that's not fun for a game. That's just annoying. But it looks great, and I love the enemy design in it. I thought, you know, a lot of the bosses were quite cool, and the monkeys were a nice addition to it as well, and the tyrants and everything were great. And it was cool, like going through the Resident Evil 2 lab when it had been remade for the first time. That was the first time that we'd seen the lab remade.
The first of many remakes.
The first of so
Jesus.
many versions of the lab, you know. And then there was Outbreak as well, and then, you know, Umbrella Chronicles, and God, it's been remade so many times. That was the first time we saw it. But yeah, I do like Zero. It's not one of my favorites, but again, it has a special place in my heart. I think because it has just been such a special part of so much of our content, ultimately.
I think Resident Evil Zero is, I mean, I don't really like it, to be honest. I think it's the weakest out of the original kind of survival horror Resident Evils. But I love the lore behind it, and I love the fact that a couple of years ago, Capcom put out a TGS teaser of the N64 Resident Evil Zero.
Yes.
What were your thoughts about them kind of ignoring I mean, this would have been sort of 2000. They had that absolute technological masterpiece that was the Resident Evil 2 N64 port, which is unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. A game should not exist. What's your thoughts about them moving that from the N64 to the GameCube? Think it was the right decision?
So I was looking through your content actually the other day, and I saw your interview with, sorry if I haven't quite said his name correctly, Aidan Watkins, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Aidan Watkins,
yeah,
Classic
Aidan
Horror
Watkins.
Mods.
Yeah. So I believe, isn't he doing a mod at the moment where he's extending out the N64 version that was made to become an actual playable version, I believe?
Yeah, so what he's doing is Aidan uses Resident Evil 2 Source Next as kind of the base port that he reverse engineers. But yeah, he's literally grabbing everything of Resident Evil 0 and reverse porting it.
Yeah. Well, anyone who hasn't watched the interview with him, yeah, definitely check it out. Like, he's done so many mods over the past couple of years. We've played a couple of them as well recently, which have been awesome. But yeah, going back to your point, I do think it was the right move, moving it onto the GameCube. I think that if Zero didn't have the graphical achievements that it had, I think it really would have fallen short. I think because it was so visually stunning at the time, that really did help lift it. Whereas I think if people had played it on an N64 with the graphics and everything, yeah, I think it would be quite in the bin now. So
I noticed that throughout your, and it's only recently, sort of in the last 6 years, that you've started to play the newer ones. Did you always try and avoid playing the newer ones, or was you like, do you know what, our base was grown on classic Resident Evil, we'll keep it, rather than, because I remember one challenge you did, well, it wasn't you, but you did a challenge with, you had Metal Gear Solid 4 randomly in there.
Oh yeah,
it was I think that was 2012 or what have you. Did you always try to keep it with the older games for a reason? Any reason?
There's a couple of different reasons. I think, yeah, we had our niche, and that was definitely more with the original games, you know, sort of like 1, 2, 3. I add Code Veronica into there as well, and then Resident Evil 4, and then 1 remake, 0. So they were kind of like the main ones that we've played. Over the years, we have scattered in 5 and 7. We did some live streams for a couple of years ago. We haven't quite got around to adding in Village and things, but we are adding the remakes in. So in the challenge that we did last year, 2 remake and 3 remake are in there as well. I think it's just because there's not a load of the new games which particularly work well for challenges. I think that you definitely can do them with, like, now we've got 7 and Village. So we definitely want to do some more of those. But yeah, with games like Revelations and Revelations 2, I've played them and I've beaten all of them, but they're just not quite the same for challenging. But you know, I'm definitely open to giving them more of a go and trying them out. But I think there's also just a part of me being, as you referenced earlier, a little bit more of an old man, and yeah, knowing my nostalgic vibes that I like playing.
I saw on your channel the other day, you played Resident Evil Outbreak multiplayer for the first time. How this is going to be, I'm leading the witness here a little bit. How amazing is it that the whole concept that you can play Resident Evil Outbreak online in 2022? How amazing is that concept?
It's one of the biggest technological achievements ever, I think, which is hilarious to say. But it's funny because in the very first Resident Evil Challenger video we did, the very first challenge back in 2005, Challenge 1, Season 1, after Nathan beat all 3 of his games, he then went to go and play Outbreak afterwards. But then it transpired that he was just too tired and was just like, I just can't do a 4th game. Three is enough. That was the original deal. So it has always been referenced. But yeah, it's just weird that in the UK, on the PS2, that it just wasn't available to play online. You know, this online game that you can't play online. It was just weird.
Always bring it up on my streams. Always bring it up.
Yeah, so weird that it got referenced. But yeah, so last year we wanted to do a live stream together where we wanted to play all of the scenarios together and play it online. And it's a game that hasn't aged the best. There are things about it I like, but again, there are a lot of things that are just kind of annoying, like Zero, like inventory management, and with most characters only being able to hold like 4 items. And which level is it? I think it's the 3rd scenario where you've got the Leech Man thing that's just constantly chasing you through all the rooms. Yeah, that was just infuriating. But yeah, we did a live stream of it, but it just had so many technical problems. Like the servers would crash when we're halfway through, and because you can't save, then we'd have to do the whole thing again. Or it would get stuck on the boss fights, or yeah, there was just so many technical problems. So we didn't actually manage to beat all of the scenarios, but you know, if there was enough interest, we'd go back and finish off the ones that we did. But,
yeah, agreed. And I think if you look at where Resident Evil is now with multiplayer games specifically, they have this weird fascination that they're just trying to Capcom are just trying to get a Resident Evil multiplayer game successful, and they tried it with Operation Raccoon City. I feel it was a cool concept, didn't really work. They tried it with Resistance, it was a cool concept, didn't work, too many technical issues. And then they're going to try it again with Reverse, and I really feel like if they would just look at what makes Resident Evil so good, the inventory management, survival horror elements of it, just make it multiplayer. Oh wait, yeah, we did this in 2003. Let's just create either a modern version of it or even a port of it. I'd be happy with a port at this point.
Yeah. Well, Reverse, the game that, is it ever going to be released? Like, we're coming close to a year now since Village came out. So God knows what's going on there. But yeah, I really think that if they properly did Outbreak, and fans, well, you know this better than anyone, fans have demanded Outbreak more than anything, I think. Like a new version of Outbreak, now that the technology's there, now that, you know, the graphics and everything are there, like how good would it be to do Outbreak now, and you can play with anyone and you don't have to play it on a PC and it all works and everything? Or, you know, if they release something like Zero, something that has 2 characters and they just kind of, you know, they worked out the inventory management and they worked out all the things that didn't work, that could be great online as well, you know, because they've shown it can work with like 5 and, you know, some of the more recent games, you can have 2 characters on screen. But yeah, the concepts are there, but they're just, you know, they just need to refresh them properly.
And I very much, I'm worried for Capcom actually with Reverse, because where they've announced that it was meant to come with Village, and they've kind of pushed it back. And I feel like they're trying to get us to forget about it. I'm worried that they could be setting themselves up for like a class action lawsuit here, to be honest, because they promised it was going to be with Village, you know, on PC, it was promised it was going to be with Village. If they then don't deliver on it, they're not delivering on a product that people have already paid for. So I really don't see it extending anywhere. There's not going to be cross-play. And I think not having a game that's cross-play in 2022 is almost a death sentence, because you're limiting the longevity of the game. I don't really feel like there's a massive Resident Evil esports community that needs to be capitalized on. This is almost the same arguments that we were having about Resident Evil as a whole back in 2012, 2013, where it's like, Stick with what you were good at. No one wants to, if people wanted to play Gears of War, they'll go play Gears of War. If they want to play Call of Duty, they'll go play Call of Duty. You don't need to make a game that, this is Resident Evil, not Jack of all trades.
Yeah.
And I just feel that's probably where they're going with the multiplayer. I would love to see it released, but I don't think anyone's asked for it particularly.
No, I think the problem is that just Capcom unfortunately just don't seem to have the best public relations. And as I was saying earlier, like just with their inconsistency with good game, bad game. Oh, we're going to try this. That's not Resident Evil, but we just put the Resident Evil logo on it. It's just all over the shop. And so I think fans over the years have just become a bit disconnected. It definitely brought us back with, as we're saying, like 2 Remake and Village and having some good content. But yeah, there's been years and years of shit, unfortunately, that, it's going to take a while for them to, repair the bridges for.
And it's almost like Silent Hill fans now know how we feel.
Yeah.
Because they're going through it and probably 10 times worse.
Yeah, what's your opinion on Silent Hill series? Have you played through like most of the games or? So
during lockdown, I play through briefly play through 2 and 3 because Resident Evil scratches that itch for me. When I play something else, it's kind of like watching it's like watching like Michael Myers, for example, and then watching another film that's kind of similar to Michael Myers but is ultimately not Michael Myers.
Yeah.
I struggle with it, and there is a market for it, and obviously people love that kind of psychological horror, but it just doesn't scratch the itch for me. I try every year, and I just can't. What about yourself? Are you a fan of Silent Hill?
Yeah, I am a fan. I'm not like a super fan or anything. So last year we did a Silent Hill 1 and 2 live stream, and yeah, I loved both of them. Like Silent Hill 2, I probably would put in like my top 10 games of all time. I absolutely love that game. I think it's amazing. I still haven't done Silent Hill 3 yet, so I'm going to be doing a live stream of that this year, which will be fun. And then Silent Hill 4, again, just, it's got such a weird reception that I don't really know if it's worth investing my time in because there are so many other games that I still want to play. The number one at the moment, which I'm really looking forward to streaming in the next couple of weeks, is Alan Wake. So yeah, I've not played that, and loads of people have requested it in the community. So yeah, it'd be fun to give that a go.
Obviously, the huge announcement of Alan Wake 2 from the Game Awards has certainly got everybody excited and kind of nostalgic to go back and play the original.
Yeah, definitely piqued my interest. I've now got a reason, to get through it properly. So yeah, that'll be good fun. And yeah, in terms of like other survival horror games, like I love the Dino Crisis series, especially Dino Crisis 2. That's great.
Music to my ears. I'm so glad there's somebody else that prefers Dino Crisis 2 over Dino Crisis 1. I love Dino Crisis 2. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's just so much fun. It just really reminds me of Resident Evil 3 Mercenaries. Like that, just that arcadiness and the really fun weapons and that kind of extra injection of action just made it like so much more fun and engaging. And I feel that Dino Crisis 2 really encapsulated that. Dino Crisis 3, we won't talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I've been, because there's not you can't play it on a modern Xbox. You have to literally own an Xbox and the retail disc. So it's been quite frustrating because I do want to. I've seen it online. I do want to try it out at some point. I know what to expect, but it's just so hard to. It's just so hard to sort this. It's not like I can just get an emulator of it and it's just kind of there. It's such a ball ache to do it, and I just feel like I'm going to probably spend all this money just to get one game, and I've got no reason to justify it.
Yeah.
So and Dino Crisis 2, I feel like it ages better than Dino Crisis 1 because Dino Crisis 1 was the first, and I know we don't call it a Resident Evil game, but it pretty much is. It was the first quote unquote Resident Evil game, if you don't count Survivor, to be in fully 3D. And I feel like because Dino Crisis 2 went back to pre-rendered backgrounds, excuse me, it just looks so much better. Like I just love going back to it. I love the detail. I love the lore around Dino Crisis 2.
Yeah. The problem is, so when I did Dino Crisis 1, we did a live stream of it 2 years ago, I think was the last time. And yeah, I do really enjoy the game, and it is terrifying in some ways more than Resident Evil, because you just can't kill a lot of things. Well, I guess it really depends on difficulty and everything, but just, a lot of the time you're tranquilizing dinosaurs rather than actually killing them. And, that makes it terrifying. And the fact they can run after you, it's sort of like you get hunters from the beginning of the game, essentially. But yeah, there was just something about the maps that were just less engaging than Dino Crisis 2. I just found like there's a lot of like grey corridors and things, whereas Dino Crisis 2, it's always changing. You're in the forest for a bit, and then you're in some labs in another bit, and it just felt a little bit more dynamic, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're bob on there, actually, because the amount of times I'm playing Dino Crisis 1, I'm like, I'm fucking lost here. Like, I've got the map up and I still don't really know what I'm doing. And I can't believe it took Resident Evil so long to get on the whole aim and move situation. It took till what, Resident Evil 6 or Resident Evil Rev 1, I think it was, which had moving and shooting. Like, it had, Dino Crisis 1 had this. Silent Hill had this. Why do you think it took so long for Resident Evil to adopt that?
So I think it was done intentionally by Capcom, because the success of Resident Evil was that vulnerability that you had in that, if you started off the game where enemies don't feel like a threat, if you had like melee weapons and, you can just kick enemies and they don't feel like a threat, then where's the horror element? So you're always feeling like you're backed into a corner, that the controls are difficult, you can't see what's around the corner. All those things I think are intentional to kind of add to the horror factor of it all. And so I think they thought that if they added in the walking and the shooting, that might make you feel overpowered, or that you've got that extra strength that you didn't have before. And I think that when the other series like Dino Crisis showed that you could do it, then they thought, okay, well, we'll give it a go.
What was your thoughts on the Gun Survivor series of games?
It's funny you should say that, because we did played the first Gun Survivor, did a live stream of it a few months ago. First time I played it since, like in like 20 years or something like that. And I like the first Gun Survivor, I think, because so much of Resident Evil 2 is in it, is in like the models and the gun sounds and, all those kind of things. I'm still yet to, and this is another live stream that I want to do in the next couple of weeks or so, is I've never actually played the Gun Survivor version of Code Veronica. And, you heard about how passionate I was about Code Veronica earlier. So, yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what that's like. I mean, I read about it in Itchy Tasty, and, I know everything about it, and I know all of the, little fun things that they put into it. But I've never actually played it myself. So, yeah, that would be quite fun. But yeah, so it's a weird concept. It was quite a gamble on their behalf, and didn't really work out.
No, I mean they did end up doing obviously 4 Gun Survivor games if you count Dino Stalker, with Dead Aim on the end. Yeah, just a really bizarre concept from Capcom to kind of focus everything. Appreciate this, isn't it? But kind of focus everything on like a light gun was just kind of bizarre. And I think the G-Con 45, the one that came with the PS1, I don't think was appropriate at all. But because I played Resident Evil Dead Aim recently, and I've managed to get it working with a Wii Zapper, and holy shit, it's amazing. It's absolutely glorious. It's like playing it with a G-Con 2 back in the day. But it begs the question: why does this exist? Why was this a thing?
Well, so all of you Resident Evil challengers who are there in the live stream, they all know my thoughts on Dead Aim. So when I did Resident Evil Challenge 3 of Season 3, I vowed to never play Dead Aim again, because I think it's such a piece of trash. And I've kept my word. I've not touched that game since then. So yeah, I just hate that game. And especially, I've totally forgot what the name of the boss is. But just like some of the big blob bosses that you keep fighting, I don't know if I've ever fought such bullet sponges before. They're just boring ultimately.
Do you think though, and I thought this about the original Gun Survivor, do you think that people are giving these games bad raps because they're playing it with controllers which isn't what the game's intended for? Playing it with hear me out. Playing it with a Wii Zapper, your aiming's better, your movement is 10 times better. It's how it was. I appreciate it slightly changed around, but it's how the game was meant to be played. Playing dead aim and having the reticle on screen using the analog stick was just absolute trash.
Yeah. The Wii really nailed it actually with a lot of the Resident Evil games, I felt. So like I mean, there's countless versions of Resident Evil 4, as we all know, but I think my favorite version that I've played over the year was the Wii edition. I felt like the Wii controls really worked out well on it. I think in some ways it makes you slightly overpowered because, you know, the fact that you can wave the remote and you've got an auto aiming knife. For some of the bosses like Krauser, you can literally go into, you can like turn around on your chair, just wave the remote and beat him, you know. So in that sense, it was a little bit overpowered, but I thought it worked really well. So yeah, the Wii was pretty great.
And I'm surprised more didn't come to it, because actually until the VR port of Resident Evil 4 come out, Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition was my go-to port. Like even over the really good-looking PC version, with all of the mods that you can get for it now to make it look absolutely fantastic. Any version of Resident Evil 4 just gets trumped by the Wii Edition for me. Just the controls, everything about as you said. I actually remember watching a comparison video that you did, like 2010 or something. 2010 or something, and he was like, "Oh, look, all the barrels are different." It was like, "What? Why are the barrels different?" That makes no sense. But
I'm not going to get away with anything on this podcast, am I? All this content
that
has kind of disappeared from my channel that I thought people would forget about. But yeah, being held to account for it all tonight, unfortunately. But yeah, I did do a review of all the different versions. But yeah, that was how nerdy I got about it. I was literally looking at how the barrels looked different in the different versions. But yeah, the PS2 version, they and also Itchy Tasty again, great book. In there, they kind of talk about all of the challenges that they had with being able to get all of the content to fit on the disc. And, you know, the audio, you know, they really had to like make a sacrifice on the audio and the textures and everything. So, yeah, the PS2 version really wasn't a good version. But I feel it was a version that a lot of people started off with. A lot of my friends who played 4 for the first time played it on PS2. And, yeah, wasn't great for them.
And indeed, as per Itchy Tasty as well, I think Alex shares a great anecdote, because again, it was meant to be an exclusive for the GameCube. Shinji Mikami famously said, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of, "If this appears on any other console, I'll eat my shorts," or something like that. And then like the year afterwards, it then come out on PS2. But I think that was necessary. I 100% believe that. I know they had a deal with Nintendo, but the cultural impact of Resident Evil 4, not just for gamers, but for game developers, with the over the shoulder aiming, some of the different game design choices that they had, the quick time events was, you know, no one really did that back in the day. The cultural shift, that was huge. I don't think it would have had that impact if it would have just stayed on the GameCube.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like, this is again a very layered rabbit hole that you can go down about Resident Evil 4 and was it good for the series? And, you know, everything that you just said, it just innovated so much. And I love Resident Evil 4. I put it up there as one of my favorites. I can understand why a lot of people, you know, are annoyed at how it changed the format then, because then it did push the series in a direction it didn't want to go down. And obviously when it got to like Resident Evil 6, it went too far down that action road. But I thought it was really good changing it up and innovating so much. And yeah, I loved 4. And 4 was a very big part of our content at the time, because it was just when it had come out. So it had come out, yeah, maybe a few months before we started doing our content. And so it was like the newest Resident Evil at the time. So yeah, again, holds another special place in my heart.
Is there anything from your early content creation, say 2000, like season 1 sort of era. Is there any moments that stick out for you? Any anecdotes you want to share with us that made you laugh or?
Oh, there's so many. So, I mean, season 1's a weird one because season 1 was, months after I got my first video camera. And, so half the time the settings are wrong or things aren't working on it properly. It was also, we didn't get a tripod until right at the end of the series. So all of the boss fights and everything that you're watching are just being filmed handheld, like a shaky hand like this, filming a TV screen. So it wasn't until right at the end of the series where, we invested all of our pocket money and brought a tripod. So then, it looked a little bit better then. But yeah, I mean, season 1, I think the most iconic moment back then was in the 4th challenge of season 1. Yeah, but you referenced it earlier. There was this whole thing going on with Nemesis, playing Resident Evil 3, and just on every single Nemesis boss fight that I did, it just something unfair happened. So the most popular example is I'm fighting him in the RPD, the second Nemesis boss fight, and he's got the rocket launcher, and he just kept on shooting me to the point that I couldn't stand up. And in my 15-year-old pubescent voice, I just went, "That's cheap!" And that one soundbite has been used more times than I can even recall. So yeah, and that wasn't even the only moment. So there was that RPD fight. Took me multiple attempts to beat that one, and then later boss fights after that, I was having similar things with the rocket launcher, where every time Jill tried to stand up, she just got stun locked by another missile. And yeah, people around Google Video at the time were commenting on like, "I've never seen this before. This has never happened before." And it just turned out the one time where time was really, really important was the time that I was getting this weird glitch happening.
So this was, this was back in your, let's call it your video on demand days, where you would just compile all these updates into one sort of 30, 40, 45-minute video.
Yeah.
When did you make the step towards early live streaming?
So, right, let's go back. So the reason why we started filming it originally was, as I was saying earlier, we wanted some evidence to show that we could actually beat the videos. I think when we were 15, we initially thought that, this 24-hour marathon was going to appear on the Guinness World Records or something like that. And so we wanted to have that video evidence for it. And so then, we were trying to edit the video footage, and I put it up on Google Video at the time, which was the platform before YouTube. And I just uploaded it to my Google Video so that I could send a link to my friends at school to say, "Look, here you go. Here's our video. Here's to show that we've done our Resident Evil challenges." And I didn't realize at the time that they were available to the public to go and view. And so I just left these videos out there for like a couple of weeks. And I went back to go and check the videos. And I saw that they just had tens of thousands of views and hundreds of comments of people like saying like, "Oh, this is great. I love it. Oh, this is so cool. Oh, I've never seen anything like this before." And yeah, people were like, "Oh, can you do another one?" And so then, yeah, we just started doing more of the videos. And then after a while, you know what it's like in the YouTube comments, we'd start getting people saying, "Well, we can see where your video stops filming. You're not actually playing all of the games. You're cheating. You're just loading the saves. You're not doing the whole thing." And so then I saw that as a challenge. I was like, well, how can we disprove this person? Because again, showing my age, this is before Twitch. This was before YouTube streaming. This before any game streaming was out there at all. And I was like, how can I find a way where people can watch us the whole time and see that we're not cheating? And ultimately, we found this platform that was called Cam Streams. And Cam Streams was, at the time, mostly used like Babe Station. It was a platform for teenage guys to pay money to watch women to undress themselves. And yeah, there was no other kind of platforms there of live streaming. And so, yeah, I found a way where we could basically connect our webcam into our laptop, and we could host our videos on there. And somehow, even though with the nature of the platform being what it was, we actually became like the most popular live stream on there, to the point that we actually had to get the servers from the hosters to they had to increase their bandwidth, because we used to have so many people that were watching our content. And we even had to do like competitions and things, because the servers couldn't host everyone that wants to watch it. So we'd have to do like competitions on our message boards and forums, where people could win the opportunity to watch our live streams. So yeah, it's a completely different generation from what it is now, because obviously viewers are, sort of unlimited, and the infrastructure's there. You just basically plug in a capture card, or you go straight off your PC and it's there. But yeah, we were trying to do stuff that just hadn't been done before, and that was essentially how we got to where we are today.
Do you not appreciate, and I appreciate it's quote unquote easier to stream now? Don't you appreciate kind of the simplicity of how you used to do things, where it's just two guys, a camera recording two screens at once on your CRTs with your GameCubes, like just shooting the shit for 24 hours? Don't you just kind of miss those days? Now everything's got to be like super professional. You got to have this, you got to have that. It's all got to be kind of prim and proper.
Yeah, I mean, there was something really enjoyable about that simplicity. Like, for example, the 24-hour live stream, the Christmas one that I did last year. So that took like a whole day to like set up, before like setting up the live stream and the lighting and the audio and decorating. We had this thing where we had like a Christmas tree, and it had these baubles on it, and for each game we'd have to take a bauble off the tree, and I'd have a different stipulation that I'd have to do. So it'd be like no first aid sprays, or no handguns, or things like that. And so it was like an entire day just spent to setting up things. Whereas back in 2005, get a camera, get your console set up, get a couple of Lucasades, and that was it. I think
the Lucasades.
Yeah. Spend like 10 minutes setting things up. But yeah, Lucasades, are a real, and yeah, if you're American or from outside Europe, you may have no idea what Lucasade is. But essentially, it's a energy drink that is based from the UK. And yeah, from right back in the early days of Resident Evil Challenger, we would always have Lucasade. That was our thing. It wasn't Red Bull, it wasn't Monster, it was always Lucasade. And Lucasade made it into a lot of like our really famous like moments. So there'd be things like partway through the challenge, you'd be like, oh, really tired, time to crack open a nice fresh bottle of Lucasade. And you'd open it, and then it would like explode in the room, and the controllers would be covered in all this stuff. Lucasades are a very big part of our memories, to the point where even on like our Discord, some of the emoticons that we have are Lucasade bots.
Probably goes without saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think if you was born sort of 10, 15 years, or say 5 years later, do you think you'd be doing the same thing?
I think so, yeah. So like outside of all the streaming and everything, so my career is being a filmmaker. So I work making sort of documentaries and video content for different brands and things like that. And yeah, I've been doing that since Resident Evil Challenger. That was all around the time that I got my first video camera, and that passion has always been the same. And that all came from my granddad, who was really into filming, and he used to make like little home movies of us, like when we were children. And yeah, that just really inspired a passion of mine towards cameras and video content. So I think, yeah, regardless of when I was born or when I started doing the content, I think that passion for cameras and video games would have come out at some point.
No, yeah. I mean, you can see the passion for, and how that would translate to kind of, I hate to use the term real life, but like your career. It's just crazy. I can't believe it's 2022 and Resident Evil Challenger is really as strong as ever.
Yeah, like I'm just again so amazed at how successful lockdown was. Like, yeah, I think everyone here can agree that lockdown was an unbelievably challenging time. A bit of a social experiment in a way. The fact that, people were locked in their own houses without being able to see friends and family and being disconnected. And yeah, it just turned out that the exact time that me and Nathan were making our first trailer to come back for the first time in 5 years was exactly when lockdown happened. So we just finished making our trailer and we released it just as we went into lockdown. And so that already created the interest. And it was also the same time as you experienced when Resident Evil 3 Remake was coming out. And so I was planning on doing a load of content around that. And the timing was just perfect and everyone was at home. So it just meant that we got way more viewers than we normally would have done. I think it might have fallen a bit flat if we weren't in lockdown then. And yeah, it was just honestly the best thing. Like, I feel that if I hadn't have had all of this stuff to have done throughout that whole time, like, my mental health would be in a completely different point right now. Like, it just kept me focused. It gave me a reason to get up. It gave me a reason to do things. It was just a project where time would just slip by, and I was always enjoying it and doing the live streams and, you know, having social interaction. Yes, people weren't there in person, but just having people to just mess around with and to have a laugh with was just, yeah, it just did me so many favors. So yeah, I feel unbelievably grateful for having the opportunity for it all.
And the amount of people that have come in my streams over the years, and especially during lockdown, when they was like, do you know what? Like, life it absolutely sucks at the moment, but I can come here, I can escape, and we can just talk about our favourite game series, which is Resident Evil. And that aside from that being really humbling, it's also the mental health break from content creators, because, you know, it sucks being at home. It sucks being isolated by yourself, and just having that facility, even though they're not speaking to you back, there are people with you, and there are people that are reminiscing about a better time, which is when I rediscovered the old Resident Evil Challenger stuff. It was almost like reminiscing to a simpler time where life wasn't complicated, and I think that's why your old content resonates with me still. It's just it was shot at a simpler time where things were a little bit different, for better or for worse. It's not for us to decide. And it must feel good, you know, people coming into your now new streams and being like, man, I remember watching this back in 2007, 2008.
Yeah. No, it has been great. It's nice that we've been able to take the format to a new level. So we've got all of that nostalgia, all of those memories, and, you know, they've sort of been moved into a new kind of wave that we're in at the moment, where we're trying out all these different live streams. You know, last year was the first time, no, sorry, year before that, 2020. 2020 was the first time that we started playing games outside of Resident Evil, other survival horror games. So we were doing like Alien Isolation and Dino Crisis and Silent Hill. And it's just been nice that we've now been able to start changing up the format a little bit more and trying some different live streams, doing a lot of mod playthroughs, doing a lot of beat the clock challenges, doing a lot of, you know, stipulation challenges, some co-op runs, some comedy streams. Like, yeah, we've got all of these different avenues, but everything amalgamates with the 24-hour challenges. So yeah, you know, we've been doing about one a year at the moment. Last year we did two. But yeah, as soon as it's in the build up to another 24-hour challenge, yeah, the hype is unreal, and you start seeing old faces coming back. People start coming back onto the Discord and everything, you know, the days around the challenge, and the buzz is great, and yeah, everyone loves it. And then after the challenge has happened, then there'll just be memes and GIFs and timestamps just going for days of all of the ridiculous things that have been happening.
I remember Resident Evil rechallenger.co.nr quite vividly. Like,
R.I.P.
Yeah. What happened with that, out of curiosity? Did you just let the domain expire, or you just felt like there wasn't a need for it anymore, or?
Oh man, I'm gutted. So one person who deserves some credit. He is Creamy Elephant, also known as Jack Claxton. He has been there from 2006, I think it was, and yeah, he's been essentially sort of like my right-hand man throughout Resident Evil Challenger. Like, he did like a lot of our like graphic design, like our photoshopping, and he's always just been there in the background helping and moderating and an ideas guy. And he just has this kind of superpower with archiving, where he's just like archived so much stuff, or he's even like screenshotted loads of stuff off of the old message boards, and it's crazy the lengths of material that he's got. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy amount of stuff that he's got. But yeah, we've just got so much like archive that's been saved there from the years, and yeah, there's so many memories that he's got, loads of videos and everything that's been saved there, and it's been really useful to a lot of the content that we've been putting out now.
And I just remember like going on rechallenger.co.uk and you had like a speed, like it wasn't just about what I loved about it wasn't just about you. Like you could have very easily just gone, this website is completely egotistical. It's all about us. This is all about our times. Like you opened it to the community. You had your forum where you could all talk about Resident Evil, but you had like the community speed runs, the community challenges where other people could post their challenges to your website. And at that time, I was like, wow, look at how many people, like one person had like 40 minutes in Resident Evil DS that he'd like taken a picture of on his fucking digital camera.
Yeah.
Just it's just such a bygone era of it, just such a simpler time. And, you know, the amount of cool people that were on the forums of .co.nr, and even he used to share a lot of the art that Jack used to do, like with his photoshopping and whatnot. And it was almost like Planet Resident Evil. Like it wasn't really a need to go anywhere else to get your Resident Evil content. It was just like a one-stop shop for everything.
Yeah, it was such a shame that website has gone. So the actual platform that I made it on, it was like Free Webs or something. I've forgotten exactly what happened. Something was either I lost the login details, or the platform that I made it on has just expired and gone.
Right.
But basically the website's not there anymore. And also the co.nr domain also isn't there. This is the problem when you have content from like 16 years. Stuff just starts going. So unfortunately, the website's not there. But thankfully, thanks to Jack, he's got a lot of things saved. We've got a lot of those old speed runs and times and everything still saved. We've still got the JPEGs that people used to send in. So yeah, every now and then we'll post them on our Discord and see the times that people set back then. And quite often, we can't actually beat the times that we set when we were like 15, 16. It's really, really annoying. But yeah, we were setting some great times back then.
Yeah, and because of how long YouTube's been around, you know, I'm looking at a video. Where is it now? Challenge 1 Season 1. This was uploaded December 8th, 2006, which I'm imagining probably wasn't the first run of it because you would have put it on Google Video beforehand. But that's longevity on a platform. Like, what, YouTube only, the Gorilla video only come out, 2005? So you was really on it, really quick on it to release content.
Yeah, it was amazing timing. I mean, just to show how old it is, those videos have the old YouTube Square format. Like, how often do you see those these days? Like, it just shows how old those videos are. But it just, a lot of it was just luck. It was just uploading it as that stuff was emerging. I really had no idea what I was doing back then. But you know, I was just like a teenager. I had a lot of time, and the thing is that I just never got bored. I always enjoyed making the content and figuring stuff out. It was really fun. And yeah, no pun intended. I enjoyed the challenge of it, of trying to make this content work when the infrastructure wasn't there. It was a fun thing to overcome.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it is great that you're still active in the community. Do you keep up with sort of other content, Resident Evil content pages now that you followed back in the day?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, not loads have been around for super long when you're talking in our kind of time lengths. But I do love Residents of Evil. Their content's great. I love how shit hot they are with everything. You know, like I'll hear a rumor from someone saying, "Oh, have you heard there's like a Code Veronica fan remake coming out?" and I'll be like, oh yeah, I should look into that. And before you know it, like Residents of Evil have made like a whole like video for it, and it's uploaded, and it's had like 100,000 views, and you're like, they're just so on it. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's a nice. JJ's a nice guy, man, and
Yeah.
he's just like yourself, very committed. Very recent. I think he only sort of made Residents of Evil 2016 when Resident Evil 7 was on the cusp of being released. So it's just crazy, just absolutely crazy that life changes, but Resident Evil is always there.
It is always there, but it's not always the same, as we have found out.
Did you? I appreciate we've been speaking a lot about all different Resident Evil games. What was your thoughts on Ethan's timeline, effectively? So Resident Evil 7 and 8, the real direction that, even though Capcom are making quote unquote remakes, the real direction of their modern games. What was your thoughts on that?
So with Ethan, Village changed everything. So like when Resident Evil 7 came out, everyone was like, oh, who's this character? Oh, he's so lifeless. Oh, there's nothing like interesting about him. And I agreed, but I was like, surely this can't be intentional. Surely there is a reason for this. And it was one of the rare times that I had hope in Capcom. And when Village came out, it paid off. I'm aware of trying not to spoil stuff, but I'm sure most people will know what happens in Village. But yeah, basically at the end, it just really puts into perspective why they did that with Ethan. And it made me want to go straight back into Resident Evil 7 and then look back at it with the things that I knew through Village. It was a really nice layered thing, which I'm assuming Capcom had always planned. I think that was always the plan that they were planning to do between 7 and Village.
Yeah, they're not keen on showing Ethan's face in like any promotional material or in game. I mean, Resident Evil 7, just like any type of Resident Evil media, like the Anderson films have their own kind of fans. Like you'll meet people that love the Resident Evil films that have never played the games. You're like, whoa, that's completely bonkers. But it's completely up to you, your life.
Each their own.
Yeah, exactly. And you saw that with sort of Resident Evil 5 and 6. There was fans of those particular games. And I think you'll see it with Resident Evil 7 and Village, where they'll almost have their own substrata of fans.
Yeah, I guess this is the risk that Capcom have made without being consistent. And it's a kind of a double-edged sword, because there's an argument to say that innovation within the series has been a real key in keeping it fresh and changing up the dynamic and everything, keeping people interested. But when you experiment too much and the games become inconsistent, then they don't necessarily feel like the same series. And when you're jumping from fixed camera to third person to first person, there's not many series that have mixed up the format that much. They're normally, they find a format and they'll stick to it. But yeah, in Resident Evil, it is, just kind of all over the place, really.
Yeah, it really is. It's just completely inconsistent. And I do fear that as they are remaking games, it's almost becoming the law of diminishing returns, where like the first Resident Evil remake was just so good. And then that kind of set the bar unrealistically high for the rest of them. RE2, although overwhelmingly positive, still had some flaws. I felt that the Scenario B was not really a Scenario B. It wasn't nowhere near as good as the original Scenario B.
You mean Scenario A?
Yeah. Yes, it was almost like an arrange mode, really. It wasn't really a kind of a separate, the characters didn't talk with each other like they did in the original. The side pack, that was always used to love getting the side pack or the machine gun. And Resident Evil 3 was even more divisive. Even less people were on board with a remake. So when Resident Evil 4, if Resident Evil 4 remake is going to be a thing, because I really don't think they're going to go for Code Veronica and murmurs online. As much as I would love them to, you're just going to have to wait for that excellent. I posted it the other day. It's the Resident Evil Code Veronica Unity project, which is shaping up to be absolutely fantastic. But if it does get cease and desisted, at least you know the real Code Veronica's coming, just like RE2 remake.
Yep, it'll be the Daymare scenario all over again.
It certainly will. Daymare, really cool guys, by the way. Love Invader Studios. But yeah, Resident Evil 3 was even more divisive. And when Resident Evil 4 inevitably comes out, I do fear that it's going to be even more divisive. The polarization is going to be even worse than RE3.
What are your thoughts on 4 remake? Are you looking forward to it? Do you think it's pointless? Are you like, what are your kind of thoughts on it?
I always feel like when we saw Resident Evil 1 remake, they took a formula which was really hokey, to be honest. You know, it was Resident Evil 1997 was it was a foreign game that they wanted to appeal to Japanese people, which is why they had these over the top voice acting. That's the way I've always said it. They're almost like over pronouncing stuff to, wow, what is this? Like they did. Everyone says, oh yeah, it's because it's bad voice acting. I really feel like it was a deliberate design choice. They didn't know that Resident Evil was going to be this huge success. It was a regional game. That's how it was meant to be. And when they did do the remake, they took that concept, took all the hokey stuff out of it, gave it a real sense of B movie realism, because it's still kind of B. But Resident Evil's always kind of been a little bit B movie. But they didn't change too much, but still made it different. It's a very hard concept to explain. The mansion was something like 70% different, but it still retained the character of the old mansion, I felt, and the character of the original Resident Evil, but it was just super hard and super, super scary. But the problem with Resident Evil 4 is it's just such a good game. Like, what's the word I'm looking for? Objectively, it's a good game. It's not even. It is genuinely a good game. So I fear when you want to remake a game, you want to make it better than the original. And what can they do better? What can they do that Resident Evil, aside from moving and shooting at this point, what can they do for the Resident Evil 4 story a story that needs to be told? Maybe they can look into a bit of Krauser's backstory, but there's nothing inside of the Resident Evil 4 story I think they need to cover that hasn't already been covered.
Yeah,
maybe an expanded Ashley scenario, maybe.
No. If there's one thing we don't want from 4 remake is any more Ashley. I think everyone here from Resident Evil Challenger will agree with that. But yeah, I think with Resident Evil 4, it just, because again we've been playing it lots, we've been doing loads of live streams of it recently. It just doesn't really feel like it's aged that much. Like being ported onto like PS4 and everything. Plays fine, looks fine, menus and graphics are all sharp. It's all polished off nicely, and it works out fine as it is. It doesn't need to be any longer, doesn't need to be any shorter. Well, actually, I don't know about that. Some people agree with that, with Disc 2, as it was in the GameCube. But yeah, it's fine as it is. And I think nearly every Resident Evil fan here will agree with me when we say that we just would love something like a Code Veronica remake. I feel Code Veronica is the Resident Evil that is most deserving of a remake, because the problem with Code Veronica is that, as I was saying earlier, like the atmosphere and the enemies and the soundtrack and everything are great. The story's great. There's so many nice dynamics of it, but it's just aged terribly. It was just like at the start of when the PS2 came out, so it wasn't really in its stride. Well, I guess it actually came out originally on Dreamcast.
Yeah, Dreamcast, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just an old game, and it was sort of in between, when they were changing it up from the pre-rendered backgrounds. So yeah, it just hadn't really got into when the PS2 was really strong and making the most out of its use. And it just puts a lot of people off. Like, it is a clunky game, and the only reason that I can play it is because I've got that muscle memory and the nostalgic memories of it. But if you try and introduce anyone now to Code Veronica who's never played it, they hate it. They hate the controls.
Yeah,
they hate the graphics. They're like, what's this? So I think if they could put it into a remaster, like that would, sorry, not a remaster, into a remake, then that would just bring so many new fans to it, and so many people that overlooked it originally would become really interested in it.
And I think that's the frustrating part with Code Veronica specifically, is it's just been treated with absolute disdain. Like, it's never been ported to any modern platform. Didn't even get a PC port, which I think is really shocking. So annoying. The the only port of actual of any importance really was the PS3 and Xbox 360 port, which made it widescreen. Absolutely love that. Had a new dynamic lighting system. Love that. Then it smeared it with this horrific like bloom effect, and it makes everything look like it's saturated. And it's like, oh my god! Like all we wanted was a 16:9 Code Veronica, which you could do because it's a 3D game. It's not like Resident Evil Remake where it's a 4x3 game, and they had to do that. You know, like the weird scrolling thing that it does. Yeah, like they had that was necessary because it was a 4x3. It was originally 4x3 game, and now all our screens are 16:9. They didn't even have that issue with Code Veronica, and yet they still fucked it up. It's unbelievable.
The really annoying thing about that PS3 remaster is that it's only really at least in Sony consoles, it's only a PS3 remaster. So they haven't made it available to any of the later consoles.
I completely forgot about that.
Frustrating. Like, so when I'm doing,
it was the PS2 port, wasn't it? It was the PS2 port that they've made. That makes even less sense.
I made that mistake. Yeah. So I've paid for it, got ready to play it. I was like, oh, playing this, my brand new PS5. Really excited to give it a go. And they're like, what?
PS2 port.
The fuck is this? It's a PS2 port. And I just don't know why they ever moved it over. So like when I'm doing like a Resident Evil challenge, it'll be like, I'll have to have my PC there for some of the door skip games. I need to have like a PS5 for like the new remakes and Village and things. And then I also need to have a PS3 just to play Code Veronica. Although I will try getting that emulated version that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. Huge shout out to Matt RPD who showed me it. Another great Resident Evil based streamer on Twitch. I'll send you a link. It's really good stuff. Carcinogen, I think, has done a playthrough on the
awesome.
on that port. But yeah, really bizarre. It did actually come out on PlayStation Now. It debuted on PlayStation Now as well. So if you really wanted to seek it out, you can. So when you brought up a good point. When you're playing your challenges, we're getting a little bit techie here. So when you play the originals 1 to 3, you typically play the PC ports now.
Well, now that I've tried out the door skips, it has completely changed my opinion of those. So yeah, traditionally I will be doing door skips. The thing is, there aren't door skips for all of them, or not like amazing door skips for all of them. So for example, like with Zero, I think it was a fluffy door skip that I tried, and I tried it a few days before I did the most recent challenge, and it was great in skipping the doors. But then there were just other errors that happened, and there'd be sometimes when enemies would just get like stuck on me or like other little glitches. And so I was like, door skip or glitches. So yeah, I didn't end up doing it.
Yeah, because I think that when I played the fluffy, because again, I've like yourself, I'm a working man. I've only got so many hours today to commit to streaming. So it's why I always love playing Code Veronica, but it's just not enough hours in the bloody day to do it. When I was playing RE0, I noticed when I got to the end of the door skip mod that actually it messes your time up at the end of the game. So I don't even think you can get an S rank with the door skip mod because it speeds it up rather than cuts it out like the remake one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so it's. You play the PC ports of Resident Evil Remake and Zero mainly, or is it PS5 port?
It varies. It really varies on what I'm doing. But generally, last year, most of the time, I was doing PC ports of both of those, and then for like 2 original and 3 original, I'm now doing PC versions of those as well. Especially with the Resident Evil Challenger Edition mods available on PC now. But then for like 2 and 3 remake, I'll play those on PS5. Just really like it on PS5, and I feel that the SSD loads really quickly. And then for Code Veronica at the moment, I'm doing on PS3. And Resident Evil 4, I'm actually playing on PS5 again. Just the PS4 version from the SSD on a PS5 just loads.
Yeah, 60 FPS,
Yeah, and also it's just like having a door skip. It's like going between sections. There's like 3 seconds of loading, which is amazing. So that's really good. But the biggest problem with that version I found is, so I've got this thing within the Resident Evil Challenger community that are called Nougie restarts, in that I sometimes get a bit perfectionist in certain like sections of the games. So, if you're like trying to run through, past like a couple of different enemies and something, and then you take like a couple of hits that you didn't really want to, and you wanted to save the health, then I'll quite often be like, oh, I really need that health. That might screw me in the long term. So I'll reset the game, and that's known as like a Nougie reset. But the problem with Resident Evil 4 on PS4 is there's this weird glitch that if you do the game reset if you do it too many times, and there's not a set amount of times, it's just completely random, the game will just crash. So you might not save for hours. You're like, oh, I'll just reset here, and the game's just completely crashed. So fortunately, that didn't happen during my 24-hour challenge. That really added to the adrenaline rush, because also that was the final game that I was doing out of 7. And I was doing Resident Evil 4 when there was 4 hours, 45 minutes left on the clock. I was doing it on professional mode with just handguns only. And so I was just like, there is not time left to spare here. And like every minute counted. And I was just like, if the game crashes now, this is just going to fuck the entire thing. So yeah, I had very clammy hands for that. But yeah, fortunately, it was all fine in the end.
You have had a couple of failed challenges before, haven't you? I'm sure it was
a couple of. Oh, mate, we've had nearly as many failed ones as we've won.
the first one of note I remember. It was years ago. It was season 2, episode. I want to say episode 3, or episode 3 or 4.
The first solo challenge.
The first solo challenge. Yeah, exactly that. And you had issues with your camera, was it, or from your memory?
So yeah, going back to the sort of like technical problems that we had. And again, this was like when it was way more complicated to like set up streaming. That's my excuse. I'm sticking with it. But yeah, it was just like trying to play the games and trying to manage this really bodged together webcam live stream. There would just sometimes be times when it would just crash, or my PC wasn't really good enough to do it. So then I'd need to pause the game and then restart my PC, and then it wouldn't turn back on, and then the webcam wouldn't come up when you plug it in, and then it was just countless problems that were going on. And then during that challenge, I think I had 2 or 3 hours of technical problems, and this was at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was just so stressed out by it. I was just like, there is no way I can attempt to try and beat 7 games after this. So that was when I was like, I'm really sorry, guys, but yeah, we're just gonna have to put this to one side. So that's not the first time that's happened. But yeah, that was the first time it happened though.
How did your and again, I don't know what your position was when you lived with your parents, but what was your parents' reaction to when you was initially doing all of these kind of challenges and staying up for 24 hours playing games? Like, were they worried about you? Was they like, I'm not sure this is... Because it's not really been, it's common now to see people playing games on Twitch, but, I still get comments now where people are like, I can't believe people watch you play games. That's weird. Like, back in 2006, that would have just been odd.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, my parents have always been really good with it. They've always been, like, very supportive. They never really seem to find it that weird. I think a lot of parents would do. But, yeah, no, they're always really supportive. If you go back to like the really old videos, you can even like hear my mum in the background sometimes. We'll be doing like an update where we're about to like, fight a boss or something. Then you'll hear my mum shout like, "Oh, Luke, breakfast ready," or something like that. But yeah, no, they've always been really good. And yeah, I think my mum was a massive supporter of our fundraising, like for the NHS. And yeah, I mean, without her and everything that she's done and her hard work, we wouldn't have done any of the things that we did like during lockdown. So that was always kind of my motivation for it all, I think.
Where do you now that you was a boy when you did the video on demand era of RE Challenger, you're a man now. Nathan is obviously grown up. You're both men. You've both got families. You're doing your filmmaking. What's next?
What's next? Well, the next thing obviously is this mod that we've got coming out next week. So really excited to give that a go. So it's the mod of Resident Evil 1, which again, if you didn't catch me talking about it earlier, it's a blind playthrough that I'll be doing. So I haven't played through any of this mod. It'll be really fun to see what that's like and see, all of the references that have been made to Resident Evil Challenger and what sound bites have been used and what the enemies and everything have been modded to. But yeah, in terms of like long-term, like aspirational goals with like Resident Evil Challenger, there aren't really many. Like I'm really, really content with what we've made over the years. We've set so many things that we've wanted to do, challenges, the fundraising goal, films, things like that, and we've done all of them. One thing I'm really looking forward to doing this year is we are currently in the process of organizing a Resident Evil Challenger meetup event. For all of these years that we've had our content, a lot of the time people have only known each other by usernames. People know Gaudi or Seadoll or, Jack C. They know those names, but they've never actually met the person. They've never sat down and had a game of Mario Kart with each other or anything. And so, as a way to say thank you to, our loyal community and everything, they've supported us with over the years, we're trying to organize this big meetup event in London this summer, which will be really nice, where we're basically planning to have like a screening where we're going to watch a Resident Evil challenge together, probably going to watch the new edit, the highlights edit of the Christmas one. And then we're also going to do some gaming together and just have a platform where people can meet each other and hang out. And it's open invite. So, to you and, other Resident Evil fans that want to come along, it's basically just an event. Even if you don't know Resident Evil Challenger, if you don't know any of our content or anything, you're just a Resident Evil fan or you're just a gaming fan and you want to meet some other gaming fans. It's open invite and basically people can come along and hopefully we'll make some new friends and have a good time.
Have you got a date in the diary for that, or is it just to be announced?
So yes, so we are actually going to plan to announce it this week. So I've been speaking to our community about it. It originally was going to be on June the 4th, because that's when it would have been the 17th anniversary of Resident Evil Challenger. But we've had to shift it back a week later, trying to organise the dates for everyone. So at the moment, we're looking at June the 11th. So it'll be in summer, and we're hoping that 6 months will be at a better stage with the pandemic and everything that's going on. But we've got fans, from all over that want to come along. We've got fans from the States, we've got fans from Europe, all over. And hopefully, it'll be a really fun event where people can just meet and actually see what everyone's like in person. So, anyone of your fans, anyone who wants to come along, Resident Evil Challenger, send us a message and get involved.
Yeah, I know in my diary. I'll pop along, definitely, 100%.
Amazing.
It'd be good to finally shake your hand after watching your content for 15, 16 years. And
we'll definitely have some Lucasades there as well. So anyone who's curious to try one, you can come crack open a bottle with us.
Indeed. No, obviously I wish you best of luck with content for the future. I still think for the longevity of your brand, you're probably the longest term Resident Evil content creator on the internet. I don't think there's anybody I can think of off the top of my head that's been going as long as you consistently. I appreciate you coming on today. Finally sitting down and having a chat with you. Of course, if you're tuning into this podcast for the first time, this is Nougie of Resident Evil Challenger, youtube.com/Resident Evil Challenger.
Nice. Nailed it. Thank you.
Indeed. Really, really recommend you jump on over if you love classic Resident Evil and you love them being done in just very particular ways. Handgun only, knife only is a huge run of yours, I know, and getting it done in the all important 24 hours. So please jump on over and check it out. It's just an absolute nostalgia run through the ages. So thank you very much for joining us all. If you're not familiar with Biohazard Declassified, we're a dedicated Resident Evil page. We do a lot of streams, memes, daily Resident Evil content. So if you're not following us, make sure you jump on over to Facebook Gaming. So that's facebook.com/bhd.gg. Thank you again, Luke. I really, really appreciate you doing this for us. And thank you for everyone for tuning in.
Thank you so much. And thanks for tuning in, guys. And final plug, yeah, we've got our Resident Evil Challenger mod live stream this time next week. So yeah, head over to Resident Evil Challenger and you'll see this face in video game form.
Glorious. Thanks again, everyone. Stay safe. Look after yourselves. We will catch up with you all very, very soon.
See you later, guys.